America, I've been ducking the issue for the last few months because I didn't know if I had the game to address freedom in hard detail in under 5 minutes. But I have one life and I'm not going to live it skirting issues.
Fellas, I'm ready to get up and do my thing.
Ethics, that aspect of philosophy that deals with conduct, is not first philosophy. You can't really do ethics without first doing philosophy of mind because we're all thinking things, philosophy of nature because we are all embodied thinking things, a smattering of logic to grapple with the structure of thought, and even aesthetics because we have to be equipped to handle new experiences. Ethics makes use of, and in some ways organizes, provides, and ensures the other aspects of philosophy. I suspect if you try to do ethics without the other bits, you end up with some form of dogmatism. However, I'm going to briskly give you all the rest so you understand what I'm talking about when I talk about freedom. There's going to be a lot of Hegel here, but I'm grateful to Hegel because he's done so much wonderful work on the subject. Let's get to work. Determinations are properties of things. A thing is determined autonomously if it gives its properties to itself. A thing is determined heteronomously if other things give it its properties. So what's the big deal about autonomy/self-determination as freedom? Here's how it works. A lot of arguments begin, what makes certain things good? For example, if you ask what makes the Bible good, some Christians will say it's good because it's the Word of God. So the Bible possesses normativity because it was written by a God who confers normativity. And then you ask what makes God good, and the only acceptable answer is that God did. And you come to see that at the base of all heteronomous claims, there is some autonomous being that determined itself. And if you press the internal consistency of these arguments, we're forced to eliminate the distinction between that which confers normativity and that which possesses normativity, which leaves us with self-determination being equivalent to normativity. The study of ethical normativity, that is, the study of goodness concerning conduct, becomes the study of actualizing self-determination in this world. Ethics proper, then, is not about maximizing utility or having the right form of will. It's about actualizing self-determination. And we do this through our interactions with each other. Here's how we actualize self-determination. Let's talk about selves.
I want to get into it, man, you know. Can I count it off? Go ahead. 1, 2, 3, 4.
There's a way in which we have drives, but we aren't identical with our drives. I can be tired or in pain, but there's more to me than just my tiredness or my pain. Now, I'm the subject for these impulses, but who I am is distinguishable from these impulses. I will survive these impulses. I do, however, possess a special relationship with these impulses. They are mine. I am the owner. Nobody can eat food to assuage my hunger, and nobody else can sleep to assuage my tiredness. These impulses are mine. I own them. Now, there's a higher level of self that recognizes objects in the world that can satisfy my desires. This rational faculty has universal content. That is, it's not just mine, it's actually instantiated in many other particular individuals. Every hungry person who comes upon a cheeseburger can think, I want to eat that cheeseburger. Now, some words are getting thrown together. Universal, particular, individual. For universal, just think about the abstract concept, for example, a seat. Now, for particulars, think about the bearer of this content. For example, a stool. But since particulars, insofar as they all contain the content of an abstract concept, are identical, each particular is also an individual because it has other content in addition to the content that's identified by the concept. An individual stool is not the same as an individual beanbag or an individual chair, although they are all particular seats. Let's get back to talking about selves. Now, this higher level self has a rational content which is instantiated in many other particular folk. So here's how freedom works. I have natural drives. For example, I get hungry. Through thinking, I resolve these drives into desires for determinate objects. For example, cheeseburgers, kale smoothies, and Skittles. Then I choose among these desires for determinate objects. Now, freedom comes in the form of choice, and American liberals are very good about talking about the importance of choice. But this formal freedom does not actualize freedom in the content of my choice. The choice between a cheeseburger, a kale smoothie, and Skittles isn't a matter of self-determination unless I can account for how I myself determine that the cheeseburger, kale smoothie, and Skittles are the appropriate choices for me. This is still a story of a heteronomous will because the content of the will is given by a power outside of myself. My freedom is no different than that of a dog who chooses between chasing a ball or a squirrel. Even if I'm really good at satisfying my desires, if my desires are given to me by nature and mediated by myself, I'm expressing just desire satisfaction through an attenuated freedom. In this way, I can satisfy my desires and still not be free. A recovering alcoholic who's choosing between whiskey and vodka is still making a choice and satisfying his desires, but he's still not free. So how do I move between this heteronomous choosy freedom to an autonomous freedom where I'm involved in both the choice between determinate objects and the content of the determinate objects from which I choose? Now this would be an object of freedom, freedom in the world and not just a formal freedom of choice. I have to understand that the world is made up of people who are recognizing and reacting to my choices within an institutional order. And this order, insofar as it promotes self-determination, affords me a peculiar kind of discretion known as rights, to externalize my freedom in objects. For example, cheeseburgers do not appear in nature. They are political artifacts that are the outgrowths of markets, interaction, the recognition of needs, and an ethically dubious beef industry. And insofar as I want the world to enable me to externalize my freedom in order to buy food to eat, I recognize that, by right, the same workers who make my food should be able to use money to externalize their freedom in a world that I contribute to making for them. And that is how recognition and right leads me to buy fair trade chocolate instead. And it shows how I am involved in the content of my choices, not merely in the choosing, and how this choice becomes an expression of my self-determination as a politically conscious consumer. I have determined who I am, and in concert with the choices of the people who make up the institutional order that allows food to be purchased. And I've involved myself in the objective world through recognition and right, not merely through my ability to satisfy my desires through choosing between heteronomously given objects. To recap, ethics, the philosophical study of conduct, is not first philosophy. It makes use of philosophy of mind, philosophy of nature, philosophy of psychology, aesthetics, and the philosophy of history. And if you make any mistakes along the way, it's easy to get sucked into dogmatism, which is fine for what it is, but I don't think you're doing philosophy anymore. And any account of freedom that is meaningful in addressing structural injustices has to inject autonomy into the content of our desires, not merely the form in which we choose among them. Thank you for taking the time to watch this week's episode of The Funky Academic. Go ahead and like The Funky Academic on Facebook. If you have any questions, please shoot me an email and follow me on Twitter. Take care.
Let me say another thing. I hope this can be put on the tail end of this. When you walk out this movie, if you walk away from your television set, it's one thing you walk out with in your mind. When you get up and walk out and look down the street, you say to yourself, damn right I'm somebody.